Hartford with the right hand. Gets all the way to Root. And slams it home.
We got a bunch of dogs on this side. We're willing to fight for 40 minutes.
And the Owls will hold on and win the Little East Conference Championship.
Oh, boy. What a game.
All right, welcome to Owls Overtime. It's Friday, April 19th, and I'm your host, Tom Rogers, and today is an awesome episode. I've got the head coach of the baseball team, Justin Blood. Coach, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I'd love to get your road to Keene State story. I know you've had time as both a player, a coach, you were a recruit at UConn. So what exactly has led you to being the head coach of the Keene State Owls baseball team?
Well, long road. Played at Franklin Pierce. Played a little professional baseball after that, and then wound up at UConn for 6 years, and then head coach at Hartford for 10. And then my wife and I grew up here, so when this opportunity came around, we kind of jumped on it, and a chance to get our kids around their family. And she works for Douglas Cuddle Toys here in Keene, so her parents own and operate that company. So she had been working for them remotely when we were in Connecticut. And so she got a chance to get in the office, do what she loves to do, and I keep getting to do what I love to do.
So you say, or you mentioned the Hartford Hawks. I was curious, the time when you were first hired there, they were kind of in the midst of a rebuild. Under your tenure, they found success they hadn't found in quite a while. I was wondering if there were any parallels between the rebuild of the Hartford Hawks and the Keene State Owls. I know they were a D1 program at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I've joked with people before that I'm a glutton for pain. My college career at Franklin Pierce, we weren't very good when we first got there as well, and turned that program around with a bunch of my teammates and a great coach that we had, and went from a program that wasn't winning very often to a couple of years after we left, they were in the College World Series, and still a really strong nationally known program now. So as a player, I experienced that, and then when I was at UConn, the Hartford opportunity came up, and I always wanted to be a head coach, and we had just been to a super regional at UConn and played against South Carolina, who ended up being the eventual national champion that year, and in front of 10,000 people, and then the opportunity at Hartford came up, and they had statistically been the worst team in the country, I think, that year. They had lost 40 some odd games and maybe won 4 or 5 games in the season. So people were looking at me kind of sideways and saying, why would you leave UConn to go take on this? And I wanted to be a head coach, and it was an opportunity for me and my wife. We had a young family, our kids were little, and I could take that job and not have to move. So it was I looked at it as a great opportunity and a challenge that I was willing to take on. And so yeah, over the course of 10 years, we built it up and won our first conference championship and went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in the school's history in 2018. Probably squandered another opportunity in 2016 to get there, but it was great to kind of, along with my other coaches and the alums and administrators and everybody that had a hand in it, take it from something that had really no success over a long period of time, with the exception of Jeff Bagwell and the Crunch Bunch, the guys that were there in the 80s, and then be a team that people really knew was going to be a challenge and respected our program, and we were churning out guys that had a chance to play professional baseball, and a couple guys that have, one guy that made it to the big leagues, and I think another one that might be real close now. So, it was a great challenge, but something I was excited about, and it worked out well. And then when this Keene opportunity came up, it was like, well, let's start over. Let's do it again. There's something really exciting about those first couple of years when you start to turn it around. And again, as experiencing it as a player myself, it's something that I know my teammates and I, we take a lot of pride in that, and then seeing it with the guys at Hartford and those alums and how they kind of bonded through it. So that's what we've been selling to our recruits and the guys that we have now, is that, look, you're on the ground floor here, you're building the foundation of the next 15 to 20 years of this program. And, the first guys that come in, they may not win a championship, but they'll know that when we do win championships that they, played a very big role in getting us there and starting those building blocks.
Well, we hope you're around here for another 15 to 20 years. One of your jobs at UConn was recruiting coordinator, like you said, and you brought in some of the talents of George Springer and Matt Barnes. Those are guys that have made a name for themselves in the big leagues. How involved are you with the recruiting process here at Keene State? And is it any more challenging or even easier to assess talent at the D3 level?
It's I think evaluating is evaluating. I'm looking for the same skill set. It might just be, and instead of a guy who's 85 to 88 at a high school, maybe he's 82 to 84, 85. I've always been a recruiter that wants to bring a kid in who has a lot of the intangibles that we love. The wants to work hard, great human being, good student. And maybe they're just a little shy of the skilled, points.
Sure.
But we think that we can develop them and get that out of them. And that's how it was. Matt Barnes didn't throw 95, 97 out of high school. He was 86, 88. And, George Springer was a scrawny.
That's hard to believe. That's hard to believe.
so it's a great story. Watching him, I kind of fell in love with, just how he played the game. And, he took some wild swings. I would see him swing and miss and fall on the plate. Like he took some really out of control swings. But when he would run into him, he would, strike the ball extremely well. And it was exciting. He could run and throw. And then one day I went to see him, and there had been some rain overnight. And there was this big guy raking home plate. And I was talking to the coach, and I said, "Man, who's that guy? Does he work at this facility?" And he's like, "No, that's George's dad." And I'm like, "Wow, George is going to be a monster someday."
Turned out that way.
Yeah, sometimes you got to look past what the kid is at that moment, and genetics are an interesting thing, right? So you look at mom and dad and say, "Okay, I got to forecast here a little bit," and so. Where some people maybe shied away from George, we were excited about what he could become, and obviously it worked out really well. And Nick Ahmed was another guy.
Oh, right.
We had an incredible abundance of talent in those couple of years. Mike Olt was a first rounder, a supplemental first round pick the year before in 2010. Ahmed was a second rounder, and then Barnes and Springer first rounders. So, some of it is, evaluating. Some of it is a little luck.
Sure,
you got to get a little lucky recruiting.
Sure.
I don't know if people thought Jeff Hunter was going to be what Jeff Hunter is.
Yeah.
When they brought him in, but maybe they did. It was really fun. Seeing the development of those guys, and I think we've got some kids right now who are in their sophomore years, and even Brendan Eaton, in his sixth year here now.
Oh, right.
He's been around for a little while, but he's playing like a sixth year. He's made some adjustments, and it's the guys who keep working at it that end up reaching their potential.
Sure.
And the guys that get frustrated and get into a hole and stop working. Or stop adjusting may not get there, but it's recruiting. I think is very much the same. The Division III landscape of recruiting in New England is incredibly tough. There's a lot of good programs. Many programs that are working hard. They've got good coaches. Facilities have improved. I think Northeast baseball now, as opposed to when I was in high school going through the process, is so different. You have so many more options and really good programs and good people to play for. So that makes it challenging because you're fighting that battle, against a lot of good Division III schools, some Division II schools, and even some of the lower mid-major Division Is.
Coach, I got to ask, how did it feel beating your former team? The Owls swept Hartford in their doubleheader earlier this year.
Yeah, it was good. It was mixed emotions. It was, we needed the wins first and foremost, just so that they come against them. That was an extra. I don't even know if I'd call it a bonus. One of my very best friends is their head coach, and we spent 16 years together at between UConn and Hartford, and there were a lot of alums that came back, and so it was a good day, a great day to get wins, and a great day to see our guys perform well, and then also get a chance to reconnect with some of those people from Hartford.
Well, someone who had a particularly good outing against Hartford was freshman pitcher Cam Thomas. And on paper, he's had two outstanding performances this year, Hartford and earlier in the season against Mount Aloysius. I always struggle pronouncing that one. What have you liked that you've seen from Cam?
Cam, first of all, he's got one of those just invisible fastballs. Like, it jumps out of his hand. It's got good spin. We noticed early on in the fall that, I think he did lead our group in strikeouts this fall. So, coming into the spring and the preseason, we had high hopes for him, whether it was going to be in a bullpen role or a starter. But he also can spin a good breaking ball. He's pretty fearless. I think that's one of the best intangibles that he's got, is that he just keeps coming. Maybe he doesn't command the zone at the highest level just yet, but he doesn't back down. He's not afraid. He'll keep coming after you. So I think Cam's got a very bright future, and he's another guy that we brought in late. We recruited him late in the process, and probably a little under evaluated or under recruited. I'm really, really glad that we ended up getting him because he's had a really good freshman campaign, and I'm hopeful for a lot more out of him in the future.
It's going to be fun to see how he progresses going forward. He's already doing so great as a freshman, so that should be exciting. Something the team has excelled at is stealing bases. You guys are 37 for 45 on attempts on the season. When I wrote this question earlier in the week, I was going to initially ask, why don't you guys capitalize on that speed a little more? But then on Wednesday, you had 4 different players with stolen bases. So do you want to see more steal attempts out of base runners, or are they getting it done at the rate you want?
So with the analytics in baseball has crept its way down into college baseball, and even though we've been pretty efficient at stealing bases, we are definitely not the fastest team. So I think we pick and choose our spots, and we don't want to run into outs. We don't want to give teams outs. So stolen bases can be a little risky, and if you're not safe 75% of the time, then it's not worth even taking that shot. So, I think there's ways that we can be more aggressive with hit and runs and bunt and runs, and Coach McKenna has implemented delay steals, which we didn't do a ton of last year, which has helped some of our guys who may not be the fleetest of foot. They can, take advantage of a catcher's laziness or a team's inability to communicate and just steal a bag when we see that window of opportunity. So I think I like an offense in general that keeps the pressure on the defense, where they just can't set up and be in a position to, turn double plays if you've got a runner on. Like they have to cover, they have to move. You've got moving parts on the base pass and guys that can make contact at the plate. It makes it really hard to defend. So the stolen bases have been good, and I think that we could do a little more, but don't let it fool you. We are not the fastest group.
All right, I'll keep that in mind when I'm watching. Another sneaky stat is that we were leading the LAC. We're now tied for the most triples. Are you happy with the contact batters are making this season?
So I've always believed that, home runs are, people look at home runs a lot, but I've always felt that doubles and triples are the true indicator of, how well and how consistently you're making hard contact. It's never a good sign if you have more home runs than doubles, in my opinion. So the fact that we've hit some doubles and leading the league in triples, I think some of it has to do with we've played on a lot of turf fields, and that the turf, especially coming out of the winter, people have plowed the fields, they're a little wet.
Yeah.
Those balls that are line drives, where at home for us, they're not getting to the wall. On the road at a turf field, they're getting to the wall, and then it becomes a triple. So. But the fact that we're hitting the balls hard to those areas is a really good sign.
In the past on this show, I've talked about some of the obvious players like Brendan Eaton, Tommy Ehlers, Jonathan Chatfield. I wanted to ask about someone who's really emerged this season, and that's Otis Follett. Aside from obviously playing more games already this year than he did last season, what has he done that has made his production at the plate skyrocket?
I think he's gotten more consistent opportunities. Last year, and even to a degree at the beginning of this year, with so many young guys, and it's not their fault, but we're, trying to figure out who fits where, So we've asked a lot of our infielders specifically to play different positions, multiple positions. Maybe a guy would play one day and then not play the next, or he'd play one game in a doubleheader and not the second game. So as a hitter, it's hard to get into a rhythm. So now we've been able to keep Otis out there and get him consistent at bats. And he's always, in BP or in fall games, shown the ability to do what he's doing now. But he's getting consistent opportunities. He's cut down on his strikeouts. So yeah, we've had a number of sophomores that have made a jump offensively this year, and he definitely is probably at the forefront of that group.
You were talking about the fields that we play on that have allowed for some of the triples that we've generated to happen. I was kind of curious about the Owl Athletic Complex itself. It's kind of a strange venue considering at the beginning of the season it's practically unusable. Even in this point in the season, you never know. So I was curious, do you like playing in there? Are there any advantages or disadvantages to the Owl Athletic Complex?
I think you always have to embrace your home park, or your home facility, whatever it is. I can remember after the Guilford basketball game, they're coming back and talking about how one end of the court was different than the other end of the court. Yeah. And, in the second half, they had to shoot on that. So it's like you have to, whether it's good, bad, ugly, where can you find advantages in your home field, in your home arena? And so we've talked to our guys about, look, the grass is, at this time of the year, maybe it's a little longer, like it's too wet to get a real tight cut on it. Maybe it's a little soft in some areas, but we can use that as a crutch, or we can say, hey, that's something we can expose a weakness on our opponents. We can take hard turns around every base and look for any opportunity to take an extra base when maybe the ball plugs up a little bit or slows down or the outfielder slips. Bunts, we've done a better job with trying to make some attempts for bunt for hits this year, and I think our park is a place where you could, one bunt for a hit a week changes your whole, season stats. Like it makes a huge difference, and I think that our park, it definitely is a place where you can utilize those types of things to benefit you. And as a pitcher, you should love our park because those doubles and triples that are on the turf fields, they're not going to be doubles and triples. They're going to be singles and doubles. So, I think it's all your perspective. On the offensive side, you're like, oh, well, maybe that's, it's a little tougher to get the ball out to left field. Maybe I don't get a triple out of this. Maybe it's a double. But on the pitching side, you're like, okay, nice. I've got some ways where I can limit base runners a little bit.
So the Owls have already tied the win total from last year. I've told both Marty Testo and Abe Oshiak, at the very least, I expected this team to be fun to watch, but I also thought that they would have more wins than last season. And I also said that I think this trend would continue season after season. Do you think that's realistic?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that we have progressed offensively how I had hoped we would progress. I think, defensively, there's still areas that we need to sharpen up, be more consistent, communicate at a little higher level. Some of it is not physical. It's not that you can't physically make the play. It's just that we're still maybe a little immature and not positioning ourselves or thinking a play ahead or understanding the situation in the game. So those things are going to improve. They'll improve physically too, but I think it's just the mental maturity that will have a big impact on that. Base running. And then, the reality for us right now is we're probably 2 or 3 pitchers short of, being a problem for some of the better teams in the league. We've had a number of games where we haven't been able to close out, the last couple innings. And we just need, a couple guys guys that are here who are capable. I think we've got guys here right now that are capable of doing that. But again, it's, when the cheesy lights are on, when a bullpen is one thing, and pitching with Rapsodo is one thing, but when you're in there against an opponent and there's the tying run on second base, the heart rate's a little different, the pressure's a little different. And, but I had a conversation with one of our pitchers yesterday, actually at practice, and I'm like, the unfortunate thing is there's only one way to get better at that, and that's to be in those situations. And I think our first year we were rarely in those situations. You know, they were lopsided game after lopsided game. And then last year, we found ourselves in more of those situations, but then the inning would turn into a big inning. You know, we've now limited that where those big innings aren't big innings anymore, but we're still not, you know, shutting the door, getting the shutdown inning when we need it. And you know, we'll keep getting in those spots until we figure out how to come through in those moments. And I do believe that the guys we have right now are going to be capable of doing that, and we've got guys coming in next year that I think are going to be capable of doing that too and give us even more depth.
Well, despite a few missing pieces, Coach, your team is in the LEC playoff picture for sure, and there's still quite a few LEC games. I believe there's 8 or 9 on the schedule. So what comes to mind that your players need to do to stay in that playoff hunt?
Yeah, we've only realistically crazy that I think we have 12 games left maybe, and 8 of them are conference games. So, yeah, we're getting down to the wire here, and a lot of these games or all these games are very important for us. You know, and it's the same message that we've said from the start. You know, we just communicating, executing, the big lapses, and again, not physically so much, but just mentally. And then coming through in those pressure situations, I think we're either gonna do some of that, more of that down the stretch, and earn that spot in the tournament, or we won't. But I feel confident that we're gonna put ourselves in that position this year. I think, you know, I like the mentality of our guys. I don't feel like they're carrying this stuff like they did last year. You know, we had a real tough end of the season. You know, after Phil Nichols went down and had those close games at UMass Boston, it was just like, it was tough. And you could feel guys were, you know, maybe a little fractured, and maybe some guys a little selfish, worrying about their own stuff. But this year, they've made a conscious decision to be a tighter group and more collected, and, you know, have each other's backs, so to speak. So I think that's going to bode well for us down the stretch. And, you know, we'll all be extremely disappointed if we don't make the conference tournament, but I think that we're going to get it done, and that we will be in the tournament, and that'll be another great experience for this group to. All right, now you thought that you know, Saturday in March or April against this team was tough. Well, now we're in the tournament, you know, and that's a whole different level, and I think that'll be a great experience for them as well.
Well, I hope to see some Owls baseball in the playoffs this year. What are your ultimate goals for Keene State's baseball program during your time as head coach?
I've said to recruits the last 3 years, you know, this is the first place that I've been where I can legitimately say that I think we can win a national championship. You know, I mean, Eastern Connecticut, Southern, like it's been done in our league so many times, and just 2 years ago with Eastern Connecticut. And, you know, like I said earlier, you've got a lot of really strong programs in the Northeast, and Endicott's ranked number 1 in the country right now. So, like, everyone around us is competing at that level. Not everyone, but
sure,
some of the better programs are competing at that level. So, you know, it is possible here. It's definitely possible here. And I think that, you know, with the support that we've got from the administration, you know, the support that we have from our alums, you know, we just need to, as we start showing more proof of that we're moving in the right direction, and, you know, every year you take another step forward, it's going to open more doors for us recruiting. And obviously, at the end of the day, to compete at that level, you need really good players. But I truly believe that if we can be the best team in our conference, then we can position ourselves to win a national championship.
I love that confidence from our coach. That's the best possible answer you could have given. I want to pivot a little. Over a year ago, I had a project for a news broadcast class. I picked the topic. It was the rule changes coming to MLB at the time. And I actually interviewed you, but the project never saw the light of day because of my terrible editing skills at the time. I mean, I really butchered the project, unfortunately, and you gave me great answers. And that was before things had been implemented. I was just curious if after a full season, if you had any strong opinions on any of those rule changes. If not, no worries.
Which rule change? You got to refresh my memory.
So the 3 that they implemented that were considered controversial I mean, one of them really is not. There's the pitch clock, of course.
The pitch clock.
The pitch clock. I guess you could call it the banning of the shift in the sense that they pretty much had 2 guys on each side.
Yeah.
And finally, the one that I don't think anyone really cares about, but I think it's actually silently made the biggest difference is the larger bases.
Oh, yeah. So I think the shift is, I think that's a good thing. There's so much information, and there's organizations that have had, and probably all of them at this point, that have like retired folks from NASA working for them, like to say, hey, like if the ball's hit at this exit velocity, at this trajectory, this is where it's going to land. And this guy does that, 40% of the time. So this is where you should position your outfielders. Like, that's insanity. Like,
yeah, that is crazy.
The level of information, for some of these guys makes it impossible to get a hit. So I think, I think we had mentioned, what was it? Not Eric Davis, but the Davis that played for the Orioles. He was a big power hitter, lefty, and he had a great stretch, and then people started shifting more and like took away all of his singles. So all he had left to do was try to hit homers and doubles, and his strikeouts went up. And it's like, if you think about some of the money that some of these guys have lost because of the shift taking away some of their hits, it's interesting. So I think the shift was good. That we need more singles in the game to have more base runners and have more, just those moments that fans enjoy watching. The innings after innings of strikeout, then homer, like it's kind of boring as a fan.
I think that's why college baseball, I mean, they had some of those rules already in place. So
yeah, we don't. The shift rule is not in place at our level.
Oh, it's not.
But there's not as much information.
Is it? What about D1?
No, to my knowledge, I
Oh,
don't
really?
believe, yes.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any shift rules in place yet in the NCAA, but the level of information is not as great.
They've always had the pitch clock, though, right?
Yeah, and the pitch clock is.
I don't know why people are in such a fuss about that.
I think some of these pitchers are, they're grasping at straws if they're trying to say that the pitch clock is, causing injuries.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of traditional baseball fans be like, the pitch clock is causing all these aces to be out. I'm like, well,
when I was younger, as a youth growing up, all of my pitching coaches, every one of them, no coach ever told me work slower.
Yeah, right.
Every coach said, hey, you control the tempo.
Yeah.
Go quick, work fast, keep the pressure on the hitter. And then I think when, and I think that there is more than a place for the mental game in our sport and in all sports. But when, some of the Ken Ravizza and the mental game, and you were watching the College World Series and you had like 90 seconds in between pitches where UVA and Vanderbilt in that World Series a number of years ago, where there's all these signs and all the players are going through their in-between pitch routines, and it was just taking so long for a pitch to happen. It's like that. Oh, I understand you're trying to, reset and get yourself ready for the next pitch, but you're killing the tempo of the game. I think, these pitchers, it's as simple as you're trying to throw 100 every pitch, and when you try to do that, you're going to break. Like I use the analogy all the time with our guys. It's like, if you want to, squat 500 pounds, that's fine. You might get there, but you also might blow your back out, blow a hamstring out. Like you're going to suffer a serious injury the more weight you try to move. And the same thing goes for pitching. The harder you try to throw, eventually your body's going to give. So that, to me, that's why everyone's getting hurt. It's not the pitch clock.
And do you think maybe like when it comes to pitching, do you think guys are, well, not even guys, kids are throwing too hard at a too young of an age maybe?
Throwing too hard and too often.
Yeah.
I as a kid myself, I mean, and I was low 90s. I was never one of these mid 90s flamethrowers, but when I played baseball in the spring and summer, and then put my glove in a corner and didn't see it again until March. It was like then I played football or soccer or basketball. So it was you had some, just because of the progression of the seasons and so many multi-sport athletes, you got rest, you got time, your body moved in different ways. with the specialization and playing year round, I think we need to be real cautious of just how
Absolutely.
much stress we're putting on these kids.
So the last thing I was wondering, Coach, was if you could tell me a little about the Justin Blood Baseball Academy and what that is.
It's just our camp. It's where we run our camps through. When I was in Hartford, I started an LLC, and so when I came here, I just brought it with me. And so it's some folks run their camps through Keene State. I run them under that name, but we run a youth camp in the summer, which has grown in the last couple of years. So that's been good. Trying to just connect with the youth in the area and give them an opportunity to come work with some of our student athletes and our coaches in the summer for a week. And then, we run a bunch of prospect camps and team camps, just trying to get recruits here to campus. I think the more people we can bring here, the better. Even if we don't land, you're going to have 50 kids at a camp. You're not going to get all those kids to come here. But as long as they come and have a good experience and can see our campus and see Keene and go home, maybe they'll tell someone else about that experience and what they saw and what they liked, and that'll motivate that person to come for a visit. So it's a way for us to evaluate, to market and brand and kind of community outreach too, all at the same time.
Well, Justin, thank you for coming on the show, and best of luck with the rest of the season. Seriously.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.